The dangers of New Year's resolution is that it's going to ultimately end up in your self-sabotage. Because during this time, first and foremost, that you're setting up a goal, what you're also saying to yourself is there's a lot of pressure I'm putting on myself to achieve this goal. Because this goal has to happen so that I can be successful. This goal has to happen so that I can have joy, so that I can be happy, so that I can feel accomplished. And of course, so that I can have self value and self worth. Are you ready to bring your dream body and health into life, but just can't seem to keep the motivation going? And is it finally time to address the self-sabotage and the unwanted eating behaviors such as binge eating, emotional eating, and nighttime eating that you know are getting in the way of your goals? Do you ever wonder what it would take for you to feel in control of your rituals so that you can stay consistent and see results? Welcome to this week's special Make Peace with Food Minisode on the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast, where you'll learn how to overcome unwanted eating behavior and other self-sabotaging habits by shifting your nervous system so that your body works with you instead of against you. I'm your host, Sherry Shaban, and with each episode, I am honored to be your coach and guide in the journey to make peace with food and find food and body freedom so that struggle with weight is a thing of the past. When you tune in every Thursday on the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast, you'll catch the latest conversation on unwanted eating behaviors and learn how to shift the nervous system, rewire the brain to new patterns, and end the food and body obsession so you finally feel relaxed and no longer confused around food. Now, before we begin, I want to quickly invite you to grab a free copy of my Food Freedom ebook that I have for you at makepeacewithfood.com. And if you find that this conversation resonates with you today, then I also want to invite you to join our free Make Peace with Food Facebook community at myfoodfreedomlifestyle.com, where you can connect with me and my team directly. The links are in the show notes. And of course, if you know somebody who you feel could benefit from these conversations and discussions, make sure to share this podcast with them too. All right, so we're just about to jump into it, but before we do that, I have a super quick announcement. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you're ready to take a time out and focus on just you for a whole week, then I want to personally invite you to join me for the Transformation in Paradise Empyrean Retreat in Costa Rica, May 24 to 31, 2025. This is going to be the most transformative week of your life at the breathtaking Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica. Now, this will be a small group experience with exclusive access at the Blue Osa Resort. Imagine waking to the sound of the Costa Rican rainforest musical every morning, starting your day with a yoga practice overlooking the Pacific Ocean, joined in with howler monkeys, daily walks on a private beach that goes on for miles, macaws flying overhead, spa treatment at a 5-star resort, and the best farm-to-table food ever right from the Blue Osa farm. This retreat is designed to reset your nervous system so you stop the patterns of self-sabotage and overwhelm. You reignite your motivation, you release any addictive habits, and open yourself to the health, relationships, and financial abundance you deserve. Intrigued? Curious? Let's book a call to find out if this retreat is the right fit for you. All you have to do is head on over to sherryshaban.com/retreats and you can book a time with me there. Plus, if you rate and review this podcast, giving me a 5-star rating on iTunes, and then send the screenshot to sherry@sherryshaban.com so that I know who you are, you'll receive the voucher to join me as early bird discount and get $400 off of Empyrean. So remember, this group is small and the spots are limited. Let's book a call to see if it's right for you. All right, now let's get into it. Today, I want to talk to you about something very controversial. And I really want you to listen up if you are that type of person that generally loves to set these New Year's resolutions, whether that's around your health, your fitness goals. And most of the time, let's face it, it is. Most of the time, that's what you're doing. You're setting up New Year's resolutions around what this year is going to look like, the types of things that you're going to stop doing, the other things that you're going to suddenly start doing. And you set these big, rambunctious goals. And I want you to sit in this space with me today because we are about to dive in to something very, very important. And a big, big warning today is going to be one of those red flag conversations about the dangers of New Year's resolutions. And if you're tuning in here today, just give me a little bit of what's going on in your world right now. Are you winding down the year and thinking about how you are going to set up for next year? Are you generally that person who is setting New Year's resolutions? Or are you actually maybe in this space right now where you're feeling a little bit guilty about all the sweets and the desserts and the dinners that are coming or have been going on since really Thanksgiving? And are you now trying to just use this period to get it all out of your system? Because next year, it's a fresh year. In a couple of weeks, you get to start from scratch and you get to hit some goals hard that you want to work on. So give me a heads up as to where you are right now. Are you setting up New Year's resolution goals? Are you generally that type of person who does that? And if you are, tell me why you're doing that. Why is that? Is it because the drive is motivation? Or is it because the drive is fear? Is it out of inspiration for the upcoming year? Or is it out of a feeling of desperation right now that you actually have to do something because you are feeling out of control? And I'm going to start off by telling you a super, super quick story about myself. And I hope that you connect with this. I hope that this resonates with you today. And back in the day, and I'm going to say back in the day because I don't want to reveal my age, but back in the day, I was all about the New Year's resolutions. They were a really big deal for me. And usually my New Year's resolutions involved some really big goal around my health and fitness. It also involved a really big goal around business. It involved a really big goal around some sort of hobby I wanted to take on or something new I wanted to explore. And before I knew it, I actually had this long list of these goals that I wanted to hit. And one thing I started to notice as I did this every single year was, first of all, by the end of January, forget it, everything was out the window. And the other thing that would happen is I would have this immense feeling of failure because whenever I would set a New Year's resolution goals, there was so much riding on it. There was so much hope that I had created around this goal. This was going to be the upgraded version of Sherry. And all of these goals had to happen so that Sherry could be that upgraded version of herself. And when she didn't meet these goals, because of course, let's face it, life events happen and we get derailed. And oftentimes, when we do set these New Year's resolution goals, they're pretty extreme. They're pretty hardcore. These are huge things. We're going from 0 to 100 in no time. And we can't keep that up. Sure, it's really exciting at the beginning of the year because there's all this newness and there's this new opportunity and there is this promise of potential that we're chasing. But then once we realize that life started and now we've got kids to take care of, we've got responsibilities at work, maybe there's somebody who's ill in the family, and we had to put some of these extreme commitments on the back burner for a moment. The message that we get is we failed somehow. And this is where many of us actually start to self-sabotage. And the dangers of New Year's resolution is that it's going to ultimately end up in your self-sabotage. Because during this time, first and foremost, that you're setting up a goal, what you're also saying to yourself is there's a lot of pressure I'm putting on myself to achieve this goal. Because this goal has to happen so that I can be successful. This goal has to happen so that I can have joy, so that I can be happy, so that I can feel accomplished. And of course, so that I can have self value and self worth. So, what you're actually doing is you're putting your joy, your happiness, your feeling of success on the other side of this thing happening. And the only way that you can achieve this goal is if, of course, you're going to achieve exactly what you set out to do, which is most oftentimes very, very extreme. I'll only be happy when this happens. I'll only love myself when I release 30 pounds. I'll only be in better shape once I have a six pack. I'll only feel love if I have that relationship. I'll only feel success if I make X number of dollars every single year. And so what you're doing is you're telling yourself that you actually don't deserve these things until you achieve these goals. And so there's a lot riding on here because let's face it, that's your whole life. That's going to be that upgraded version of you that can only happen if all of these things are met first. And oftentimes, if you notice, your New Year's resolutions and these goals that you set for yourself are very extreme. They're very extreme because you're setting up almost this fantasy world. It is a world of potential. It is this dream-like state that you set up in your mind that when you achieve these things, that's when life begins. And there's so much pressure around that. And what you're also saying to yourself is that you can't have any of these things right now unless this happens. And so there almost comes this feeling of urgency, first of all, to achieve these things. And that's why we go hardcore, full throttle, as soon as that new year begins. And what you're also doing right now is you're using this time to self-sabotage as well. So not only is setting the actual goal around a New Year's resolution is setting you up for self-sabotage because you're honing into that energy of perfectionism that so much needs to happen for you to feel okay, for you to love yourself. But what you're also doing is you're creating massive FOMO right now. You're creating a massive fear of missing out around a lot of the things that are going to be off limits as of January 1st. So you're self-sabotaging because you set yourself up for perfectionism. And then you're self-sabotaging because now you've actually developed a scarcity mindset around what's going on right now. So I better get everything out of my system. I better eat all the cookies now because as of January 1st, I won't. I'm not going to have any sugar. I better eat as many carbs as I can right now, even though I'm really full, even though I'm stuffed, even though I've got no more space. But I got to do that right now because as of January 1st, I'm not eating carbs. I got to make sure that I take full advantage of what's happening now because as of January 1st, I won't be doing that anymore. And so what you're going to do right now as you wait for your New Year's resolution is you're going to actually overindulge and you're going to start to exhibit behavior that actually would be out of your norm if you didn't have that New Year's resolution. And New Year's resolution creates that scarcity mindset. It's that same mindset that you have when you're on a diet and you suddenly fell off the plan. You suddenly had a cheat meal that went wrong. Then you suddenly decide, well, it's okay. Since I've already failed and I screwed it up, I may as well just keep going because Monday, it's all over. Or I'll just start tomorrow. And so what you're doing in your mind is you're programming your mind to actually resist change because change is something that's really scary. On a psychological level, what you're actually saying to yourself through repetition and what is a program in the mind, except for repetition, it's something that you keep repeating over and over again. It's a learned behavior. You're teaching yourself that every single time you set a very big goal, number one, there's a huge promise of something awesome, like the grass is greener on the other side. And it can only happen, and I can only achieve that happiness if all of these things happen. All of these criteria need to be met so that I can feel joy. And the other thing that you're doing is you're also programming yourself to have major scarcity around what you have to give up. So when you have these big goals, you're really telling yourself that I'm about to move into something very restrictive and very extreme where all of my happiness is dependent on it. And I better get everything out of my system right now because I'm about to go into a major scarcity. And on a neurological level, on a nervous system level, that feels very unsafe. And you've heard me talk about safety before. And when we talk about safety, when it comes to regulating the nervous system, we are not talking about the absence of danger. We are really talking about being able to be in that place where you are at ease. It's not safe to have negative thoughts about yourself. That doesn't feel safe. That actually charges your nervous system. And it triggers it into what I call protection mode, which is also known as sympathetic nervous state, and locking it into the state where now your body feels like there's a constant attack. And then your cortisol levels shoot through the roof. And now your body is in full throttle survival mode, making sure it'll slow down the metabolism. It's going to get you to overeat. It's going to get you to overindulge. It's going to get you to overdo anything that it feels it's going to miss out on. And that is the scarcity mindset. When you've triggered protection mode, you are in a scarcity mindset. You are no longer creating. You are no longer in that state of ease and abundance and faith and surrender. You're now in a state of lack. There is something that you're going to miss out on, whether that is food, whether that is time, whether that is financial resources, whether that is love around you. You're going to miss something. And that is a feeling of unsafety. If we don't have resources, if we feel like we don't have enough food, if we don't feel like we have enough love and connection around us, that feels unsafe. And so when you build these powerful, meaningful, life-dependent New Year's resolutions, that's exactly what you're doing. And you're going to sabotage yourself every single time. And so what would happen if you knew that you could have something as much as you wanted without ever running out? That is called abundance. And when you feel that abundant feeling where you have more than you need and you have a choice, then that creates safety. And what actually happens is you won't be inclined to self-sabotage. You won't actually be inclined to overindulge. And this is actually what I get people to do when they first join Make Peace with Food or they join the community. The first thing that happens is they learn how to create ease around food by shifting into an abundant mindset. If you are currently self-sabotaging with food, meaning you tend to overeat, you tend to eat way more than you need and you know it, or you tend to emotionally eat, or you binge eat, whether that means you're eating a large amount of food in one small interval, or you're eating a large amount of food throughout the entire day. Or if you are nighttime snacking, any eating behavior that you know is sabotaging your results, that you know is creating dis-ease and disharmony in your body, something that you're not feeling in alignment with, any unwanted eating behavior begins to stop and completely start to reverse itself the moment you actually work on the nervous system. And when people join Make Peace with Food and our community, what actually ends up happening is they learn first and foremost to shift from a scarcity mindset around food, which is exhibited as binge eating and emotional eating and all of those unwanted eating behaviors, to feeling completely relaxed around food. And that actually happens in as little as a month, in as little as 1 month. People who've been struggling with overeating their entire lives, in 1 month, they can stop this disordered relationship with food. simply by working on the nervous system and shifting from a scarcity mindset where the body feels unsafe and doesn't feel like it has enough food to actually feeling the abundance, that there's more than it needs. And you may be listening to this right now and absolutely doubting this. And I don't blame you. This is a hard concept to grasp. And this is really hard to believe until you actually see it for yourself. And all I'll want to invite you to consider right now is, if we do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, what do we call that? We call that insanity. And so you have to look at your entire history with food, your entire history with weight, your entire struggle with wanting to achieve the health that you deserve. You have to look at how you've actually always approached it in the exact same way. You've always approached it trying to control the food, trying to eat less and trying to move more, trying to restrict certain foods, trying to find that magic diet or pill or injection these days or procedure. But what you've actually never tried to do is make yourself have a different relationship with food. Because many people who join our program have tried the Ozempic and it didn't work for them. They've also had the bariatric surgery only to see themselves regain all that weight back again after they lost it. Why is that? It's because it has nothing to do with the food, but has everything to do with you feeling unsafe. And when you feel unsafe by setting these New Year's resolutions, these huge goals for yourself, you decide to go on this extreme diet that promises so many results, and you put yourself in a place where everything is riding on that, including your joy, including your self-worth and your self-value, and then you don't see it going about in the way that you envisioned, what you actually also teach yourself is that no matter how much I try, it just doesn't work for me. And that's not the problem. The problem is not that you need to be more disciplined or that you need to find another diet or that you still haven't found the magic formula. And it's also not because it's your genetics. The real issue is in your nervous system. It's because you've conditioned your body to feel very unsafe about food. You've conditioned your body to feel very unsafe about body image, to feel very unsafe about weight. Think about how much percent of your time you spend thinking about your weight, thinking about how you're going to get control over your food, thinking about how this year is going to be the year that you finally lose all the weight. How much of your time do you spend in anxiety, in worry, in regret, in frustration around anything that has to do with nutrition, exercise, and diet? And if you said something like 70 or 80%, I'm going to challenge that. And I'm going to say, I bet you it's even more. Because when I owned a CrossFit gym years ago, before the pandemic, and I was the most immersed in nutrition more than I ever had in my life. I mean, I could write books and books and books and books on nutrition. And people were coming to me from all over Montreal to help with their nutrition. And I wrote the most wicked meal plans for them. I could balance out all the macros. I could create something super customized. And I saw myself also as somebody who was extremely disciplined. But while I was going through all that, always focusing on nutrition, always focusing on calories, always focusing on macros and grams of protein, what actually also happened is I developed an obsession with food, with weight, with body image, and that ultimately let me actually start to create a disordered relationship with food. And so if that can happen to me, then that can happen to everyone. And I'll tell you, on the outside, you couldn't tell that I was struggling. On the outside, you had no idea that I was binge eating on weekends because I was actually pushing myself to such levels of extremeness. And I had actually triggered a scarcity mindset around food. And my body started to feel very unsafe around food. I was jumping from diet to diet, trying different types of things all the time, feeling very restrictive, feeling very out of integrity, and a lot of shame if I somehow had something that was not on the good food rule list. And this ultimately led me to feeling that I needed to do something about it because it wasn't more diets that was getting me out of it. It wasn't more knowledge about nutrition that wasn't getting me out of it. It wasn't harder discipline or more accountability. It was the fact that I had made myself feel very unsafe around food. And that's also when I started to notice that this was going on with all of my clients too. The ones that were doing really well on meal plans for 6 weeks or for 2 months, the moment that they would stop, they would suddenly start to go right back and they would start to overeat all the things that they had given up. And so it can happen to everyone. Why? Because that's actually a natural mechanism that we can turn on or turn off like a light switch. And we do that. Anytime we trigger ourselves into protection mode, which is that nervous system state that we call sympathetic nervous state, which is our fight or flight response, we trigger that and relate it to food, relate it to weight, relate it to body image, we actually start to feel very unsafe around those topics. And anytime you feel unsafe, your natural inclination is to use food as safety because food, in a very primitive level, is safety for us. That's why it feels so good to be sitting in secret eating that delicious, not super nutritious cookies or crackers or snacks in front of the TV. That's why you get that feeling of comfort. That's why you get that soothing feeling. It's actually a feeling of safety. And safety for us equals food. It equals shelter. And since you have the shelter, the next thing that your body's going to look for to establish that immediate form of safety is food. And so unless you can change your relationship with the things in your environment to make you feel safe, you're always going to default to try to use food to soothe. And so I hope you followed here, because if anything has maybe landed for you today, I hope it's the fact that the more that you restrict or the more that you set yourself up for this high goal where there's a lot of things riding on it, the more you're actually teaching yourself through habitual patterns that you program into your subconscious mind that food equals unsafety. And if I can accomplish all of these things, that's the only way I'll learn to love and accept myself and be kind to myself. And now you've got yourself in a loop because you know this already. And I don't have to be the one telling you today that you've tried this already in the past and it hasn't worked. And if diets really did work, why are we still dieting? If diets worked, why are we still dieting? Because they don't work. They actually create that feeling of unsafety. And it is our natural response, our God-given ability for our body to actually be able to withstand extreme bouts of famine through the nervous system. And so that's what we're doing when we are dieting, when we are putting so much emphasis and meaning on our weight and on our food. And so the only way out of this is for you to stop the pattern now. And I'm going to invite you today to, instead of setting New Year's resolutions or New Year's goals, what if you actually set an intention instead? An intention to honor yourself, an intention to start loving yourself more, an intention to be kinder to yourself, an intention to speak to yourself the way you speak to others, an intention to be more patient with yourself, an intention to be more open to change, to be more open to trying different approaches, an intention to have so much self-love this year that you're willing to invest in your health through time, through finances, through support, through love and care in a way that you've never done before. And that's the second part that's really important. in a way that you've never done before. If you've hired the nutritionists in the past and you've hired the personal trainers in the past and you've tried the different diets and invested in different diet programs in the past, my invitation to you is now to try something else. And this is a beautiful time of year where you can really sit back and reflect. And this is actually what I do during this time of year. I reflect. I reflect on the year. What did I love about this year? What am I so proud of in what I did this year? How did I love how I showed up this year? Where are the areas of my life that I want to improve and work on a little bit more? Which other areas of my life need my attention the most? And in this place of self-reflection, I let my body speak to me. And I set intentions around how I want to show up next year. And I've already decided that next year I'm going to show up with more patience. I'm going to show up with more faith. And I'm going to show up with more surrender. These are my intentions that I take with me into the next year. And that feels so exciting. And it feels so flexible and it feels so open. And it's so very different than what I used to do in the past, where I would decide this year, I'm going to do this big goal. This year, I'm going to achieve this huge thing. This year, once I do this, then finally I'll be able to achieve that. And that used to always create a lot of stress. Because if you are a perfectionist like me, you're going to notice that it doesn't take so much for you to feel like you failed. And that was always what stopped me in the past. I would be so in this state of perfectionism around what it was that I wanted to create, that what would end up happening is I would notice that I would start actually procrastinating and putting things off and analyzing things to death before I would ever take action. Because if it wasn't perfect and ideal, exactly as I wanted it to be, I wouldn't take action. And then the other thing I started to notice was I would start to get a little bit paranoid. I would start to wonder, well, what if it doesn't work out? Well, what will other people think? Well, will it be good enough? Well, what if it fails? Well, what if, and all the what ifs would start. Because that's what happens when you're a perfectionist. You start to get very paranoid because there's so much emphasis and so much writing on this thing that there's so much pressure that you've created. And finally, the other thing I would start to notice is that I would almost get paralyzed in my steps. It would be very hard for me to take action because it needed to look a certain way. And so if there's one thing that maybe you can set an intention around is how can you find more peace and less perfectionism in 2025? How can you find more peace? And maybe how can you even find more peace with food? Because if you find more peace with food, what you've actually done is you found more ease with food. You found more ease with yourself. You've forgiven yourself and moved on quickly when you feel like whatever you've decided to do for yourself, maybe you didn't 100% follow through today. And when you're able to do that, when you're able to pivot and move on and keep moving forward, and we call this failing forward, what you actually notice is that you achieve results. And like you've heard me talk about so many times before in the past, it's not intensity that drives your results. It's actually consistency. And the more peace that you can offer yourself, the more ease that you can offer yourself, the more consistent that you can be with all of the things that you do. And so as my invitation to you in 2024, as we wrap it up, my invitation is for you to reflect. And if you want some support around that, this year I've decided that I want to support you in really creating that peace around food. And it's all going to start, though, with you understanding whether or not it's a nervous system issue involvement, or if it's something else that maybe you haven't even noticed. I've used so many coaches in the past to help me really get out of my own way. And that's what a coach is there for. The coach is really there for you to get you out of your own way, to help you see the things that you can't see. And I've reached out for a coach every single time I've gone to that place anywhere in my life where I felt like I've maximized my resources. I've gotten as far as I can go on my own. And now I just need another perspective. And I need another invitation from somebody who's done the work, from somebody who's walked the walk, from somebody who can actually see where my faults are and what I'm doing right. Because your coach is going to offer you your shortcut to success. And if you're curious around what that could look like, I want to invite you to a free 30-minute coaching call with me. This will give you an opportunity to really start to see your own blind spots. What we'll do together is we will determine whether or not what's keeping you stuck, what's keeping you trapped in unwanted eating behavior or other non-serving behaviors is the fact that you've actually triggered yourself into protection mode. You've made yourself feel unsafe, and now you're just running those patterns over and over again. And if I see that that's the case, I'll share that with you. I'll share with you some techniques to help you get out of it. Like I said, it takes about a month for you to stop that behavior. It's actually faster than you think. And then it starts to get really fun after that, because now that you're no longer overeating or feeling that unease around food, you can actually start to play with your food to determine what feels the best. What do you actually enjoy? If you could choose and let your body choose, what would it choose? Not what does the app choose, not what does the meal plan choose, but what would you choose? And that's when you see real results, because the weight naturally releases itself once you're finally at ease and once you're finally playing with your food in a way where you can find what is the best fuel for you. And that looks very different for each person. There isn't a one size fits all formula. You have to find your own. And when you do, that's where the magic starts. So if you feel like maybe 2025 is the year where you want to move into peace, where you want to move into ease, where it's not about New Year's resolutions, but it's really about you setting that intention and reaching that intention to feel more in alignment with yourself and no longer have that judgmental stance around all the things that you're doing, then please check out the little link here in the comments. There is a direct link to my calendar. And if, of course, you don't find a spot that is going to suit you, just DM me or message me here in the chat, and I will help you find a time that works for both of us. So with that, I want to wish you a beautiful December and wish you this opportunity to really create that space to reflect and to really connect with what your true self is desiring. You got this. Thank you for listening to this week's Make Peace with Food Minisode on the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast. If this has resonated with you today, I want to invite you to subscribe to the show so you never miss a beat. And if you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, then please share this episode with them. Let's work together to help as many people as possible make peace with food and fall in love with fitness. And by the way, I need to mention that if you rate and review this podcast on iTunes and send over the screenshot to Sherry at sherryshaban.com, you'll receive a $500 voucher to join me at one of my upcoming retreats or to use it in our Make Peace with Food coaching program. And don't forget to visit myfoodfreedomlifestyle.com to join the free Facebook group for more resources. And remember, athlete, you are an inspiration. I cannot wait to hear your story.